Hey there, this is Jason. So I just wanted to put this in a video instead of a long text explanation for you, Sean Flint. Um, it was a very peculiar problem, and it was extremely hard for me to get it to reproduce. Actually, I didn't get it to reproduce in a starter project. And I think that's because there's just so many moving parts in my project between custom interfaces and um, player controller variables that are replicated, some that are not, um, instantiating variables on only the authority, and then using them immediately on the client after the authority broadcasted that it was bootstrapped or initialized. So let me show you really quick what the offending code was. So I'm going to open up my camera pawn controller, and by the way, I can reproduce this perfectly using my project, just not in a new project. So let me open this and I'll show you what was going on. Let me show you, make this quick, and I'll try to explain how my bootstrap process works. So I've got this event right here, and this is called by the game mode after it executes on post login, and this will tell the camera pawn controller that the post login process is done, and uh, this this one is called by the game state after the game state on the authority server finishes its begin play bootstrap or initialization. Oh, wrong one. Um, and it's just a way, these booleans are just a way, so here's where we notify each player controller in the game that the game state is done. And it just basically iterates each controller and calls that event, which will then set the Boolean property to true for each player controller, and it'll replicate to each client. Um, Same with is game state begin play done, that'll replicate. Um, the whole point of this is so I only bootstrap the camera pawn controller when I know that the game state is done bootstrapping and the game mode, because I try not to couple. Um, I try to have a separation of concerns, so my game state will return object references that the camera pawn controller will use. Um, and so the way I make sure that the game state returns actual references and not null or none is by basically holding off on my begin play execution until game state and game mode is bootstrapped and ready to go. Um, so on begin play all, this is executed on the authority and the clients regardless. I don't there's not an issue here, um, and it's alright if this executes on the client first and then on the authority first. Um, Here's the issue that I was running into. It was this code right here. So on my event tick, and I'm not aware of a more efficient way to do this, but if it's the authority, and if the authority copy of this camera pawn controller is not already bootstrapped, and if it is not currently bootstrapping, and if the game mode post login is done for this controller, meaning, let me show you the post login really quick. It's very simple. At the end of my on post login override, here's my override on post login. At the very end of it, I grab the player controller here, and if it implements my custom interface, then it'll call event on post login, which will call this guy right here and set it to true. Pretty much the same thing with the game state begin play. So if the authority is not bootstrap and it is not currently bootstrapping, and the game mode triggered the post login done event for this instance, and the game state triggered its begin play done for this instance, then run this code, which will set is authority bootstrapping to true, which should make sure that this is only ever executed once per tick, or across all the ticks. I have a delay in there just to give the engine time to set this to true, and so that way I don't set it to true, and by the time I set it to true, this had already run a second time. So I've got this event here, Bootstrap Authority, which is replicated to server if owning client, just to make sure it's indeed executed on the authority, even though I've got this. If I open up this, what I'm doing is these are all dependency actor references that my camera pawn controller depends on. This is an RTS, so this building manager, that's an actor that's his only responsibility is to construct buildings. This is a array of structures that are pulled out of a data table, aka CSV. Building planner, this is another dependency. And then if you see at the end of the sequence, I set on the authority, the replicated variables is authority bootstrapped to true, and is authority bootstrapping to false because we're no longer bootstrapping, we finished it. And then I call this bootstrap client replicate to owning client function, which does things like initialize the HUD, if it's a local player controller, bind some events, and enable camera movement. So this is working great as is. The problem comes up, and this is probably a design, or this was probably a design problem, but, and I understand that. I think it would be extremely helpful if there was a way for us to import the exported copies of a blueprint, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Let me show you the crash first, and I've got version control up to date, so it'll be easy to fix this. So if without these two booleans being used, I'm not quite sure why this crash happened, because thinking through the flow, when this is constructed on the server, this will be the authority will not be bootstrapped. Is authority bootstrapping will be false as well, so this will run once because we then set is authority bootstrapping to true, and we require is authority bootstrapping to be false in order to run this again. And then over here I set is authority bootstrapped to true first before I set is authority bootstrapping to false. So setting this to false and setting this to true should still make sure that these return or equal to false. So I'm not sure what the crash was. And there's an authority check here, which means there can't be any race conditions with each of these variables replicating out of sync. For example, this replicating first before this is replicated, which means that it would make is authority bootstrapped false and this false, and therefore running on the client. But let me show you the crash. So it's very simple. I just remove those two booleans, I'll save the blueprint, and I'll compile it. And I'm getting the crash. And it's again that access code violation. So I'll just send and close. I'll do a git reset. That'll remove that change. Or I guess I should have opened up the project again to show you that it always crashes whenever the blueprint is open. And that's the other weird thing. It only happens when I open that blueprint. And I think someone somewhere I read said that when you're actually editing a blueprint, it's running the tick event or something like that. I don't know. But so that was the crash. If I reopen the project and try to open up the blueprint, it'll crash immediately. And let me just show you that really quick. The more information I can give you and the team over at Epic, the better. This was a very terrible bug. To me, it's a bug. There should be a graceful way to handle this, or if this is one of those bugs where it's going to be extremely hard to fix, I think a quicker solution is to allow people to import a blueprint, and I'll show you that again shortly. So let me compile this. This is going to crash. It crashed. I'll send and close, and I will reopen the project. The project will open just fine, everything loads, but then the second I open up that same blueprint, it'll crash immediately. I don't know if I went over how I managed to get my blueprint to work again, but basically, in its current state, I can copy it without its dependencies to a new project. So I used the starter project, like third-person starter project, and I copied this blueprint when it was in its buggy state over, and what that did is it changed all of my custom interface and custom actor variables, variable types in that class to just a U object, and it broke all of the links, and so that way I was able to open it, and it wasn't running the code that was bugging it, or it wasn't doing the race condition, whatever is causing it to crash. So then I just had to save that after I opened it in the new test project with all the, and save it with all the broken links and put it back in my project. And this time I was kind of aware of what code was causing the crash, and so I had to reset all of the variable types and reconnect all the nodes. It's a lot better than having to start the blueprint over from scratch, but it was still, fair amount of work, a few hours or 4 hours, and it immediately crashes. So that is the terrible bug, access violation, that was making me go crazy. Let me show you really quick. You probably already know, but in case you don't, I'll show you what I mean by importing a blueprint. So right now, if you right-click a blueprint, it'll give you the option to migrate it along with all of its dependencies, actors, and interfaces to a new project. I noticed another option in there like last week when I reported the bug called export, and it looks like it exports the blueprint to a YAML or tab separated file. And let's see, export right here. If I export this, I'll just do, not that one, I'll just do it right here. It exports a copy, and the copy is human readable text. It's not binary like a UAsset. And so when I saw this, I was like, oh great, there's going to be a way for me to manually edit this file and take out the nodes that was causing the crash. But then I noticed that there's not a way to import that export. There's only export, migrate, replace references. I came up here to add new and I couldn't find anything. I saw that there was something, right here, import. I saw that there's this, but it looks like it's more media assets, and it filtered out and didn't let me select that import file, which is in this directory. So yeah, I mean, I think it would be a great improvement, at least for disasters like this, if there was a way to import this file. I think it looks like a YAML or a custom format that you guys came up with. But in here, it looks like it's everything. It looks like it's all the nodes, variables. So in here, I could have manually taken out the variable that is causing the crash. But so that's just I just wanted to use the video and put it together and explain it a lot clearer than I would through a text reply. So again, I got around it. It's no longer an issue of mine. I didn't have to rewrite my entire blueprint class, thankfully. I had found the code right here. Without this code, I found that without that, it crashes. I don't know why it crashes. However, I am able to reproduce it on demand by removing these two booleans. So if you would like my project, a copy of it to pass around your team, and you guys can help figure it out internally, I can do that. This time I'll leave out the git, and I actually ran this git bfg utility to delete old commits. and I want to include the starter content. So the download would be about 120 megabytes for you guys. So let me know if you have any other questions, and hopefully, I'd love to see this access violation be fixed in a future release, because it's horrible when it happens. And I saw that some other people were reporting a similar access violation, but it didn't look like the same stack trace as mine. So it looked like it could have been caused by something different. So, all right. Thanks for all of your help, and just let me know if you need anything else, Sean. All right. Bye.